Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you had a good weekend of pigskin and good weekend of basketball. Not so much for Nebraska. We'll get there. Recruiting on our mind. Is Nebraska able to get a mammoth? We'll just say a Georgia Mountain in the boat. That announcement coming just moments ago on Instagram from Jacob Hood, the third Georgia Bulldog defector and the offensive tackle at 6'8", 350. 4 years to play for Nebraska. Some quick takes on that. Another flex tight end over the weekend as well for Nebraska. So we'll kick things off with some recruiting response for Nebraska's Coach Rule and company. Keep getting after it. Of course, NFL, former Husker Zach Taylor keeps doing his thing. Man, did Cincinnati look incredible. Cam Taylor-Britt, emotional at the end of the game. Really cool to see him step up and play his best football as a rookie in that secondary. Had a big ball game, did Cam Taylor-Britt, and a big win for Cincinnati. I know there's a lot of Bills fans, Elijah, we know that we're close with, and Buffalo's a team we root for just because they're fun and interesting, they're talented, and, of course, some of the relationships we have where there are Bills fans, you feel for them, but someone's got to go home and someone's got to move on. Philadelphia looks pretty much unbeatable. A lot of Husker flavor there. So about 3 weeks from this coming weekend, from a Super Bowl standpoint, could have a lot of Huskers on the docket to get a ring or get another ring. So we'll hit some NFL and the basketball weekend. Nebraska Northwestern moved to Wednesday. What is the rest of this basketball team going to look like defensively for Fred Hoiberg, with two key pieces now down for the season? Numbers to get in: 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio. Chris Schmidt, that is me, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. And catch the show on the airwaves and always streaming the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Can watch the show live there at ESPN Lincoln Facebook, ESPN Lincoln Twitter. Give Coffee and Cream a check in the morning as well. Damon and Andrew, 7 to 9 a.m. That's where you can check the show out. Also, ESPN Lincoln, Omaha's 590, ESPN Omaha, also where you hear those fellas as well. So let's talk about Mr. Hood, Jacob Hood, 4 years, offensive tackle, Georgia, a 3-star, was pursued by Tennessee, was pursued by Ole Miss, was looked at by Mississippi State, and many others in the SEC. And it just, Georgia ended up not being a place for him. But Elijah, he's in a long line of quick-footed, just mammoths that Georgia put on both lines of scrimmage. And if you're Hood, listen, you're not quite to the level of 3 or 4 year starter in the portal, right? Because that's pure gold, and the world comes chasing after a plug-and-play offensive lineman. Hood's a guy that I think with Rule and with Raiola can really develop into something that's talented. And we've said this, we'll say it again, but it's true. You've got to be a certain dude to get a committable offer to Georgia. And you've got to be a certain dude to get a committable offer to Georgia to play those key spots, either left tackle, right tackle, on the interior, or be one of their beasts off the edge, okay? And I look at Hood, You know he's got the footwork. You know he's got the size. And at 6'8", imagine that, dude. 6'8", 350. That's like it's not quite Andre the Giant big, but that's like wrestler dude big, all right? And you've got fleet enough feet and presumably enough punch with your hand to be really good at pass protection. But above all, if you get your technique down, you can be somebody that can really create problems on the edge as a blocker. And if you're athletic enough, you've rarely seen it, but you did see it from time to time. I think a Hymas being able to pull around as a tackle, right? I mean, that's wow, right? It's one thing to protect, but it's also another thing as a tackle to go on search and destroy missions because you're that athletic. I don't know where Hood's athleticism rates right now, but I'm anxious to see where he goes as a project for Nebraska. He's a guy that they can work with, work on, and get the best football out of him. You would rather take this opportunity if you're Hood and if you're Nebraska than have another guy maybe just kind of sitting and gathering dust on the bench. You don't know how much playing time you're destined to have at Georgia just because they've got it rolling. You're one of their guys. You're talented enough to be there, or you're talented enough to do anything beyond practice field. And right now he thought Nebraska was a better option.
Yeah, and it continues Matt Rule and his staff's tradition of going and finding guys that have something that you can't teach, some sort of athletic gift. And with Hood, it's that size. 6'8", 350. And you mentioned the feet aren't bad. Are they high level just yet? No, but for a guy that's 6'8", pushing 350 pounds, his feet are impressive. Could use a little bit more bend, could use a little more flexibility, but who honestly, offensive lineman-wise, coming out of high school, couldn't. It's a guy who I still think is probably a bit of a developmental piece. Mm-hmm. He was a developmental piece at Georgia. They're going to have him sit, and you know what he says? I can go develop at a place like Nebraska where I can even still play
develop, but I can play.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the outlook is going to be for him come, say, this fall. Is it going to be a guy who's ready to come in and push for a starting spot, or is this a guy that's going to sit there and you know what? You're going to have him waiting in the wings just in case one of your starters goes down? I'm not sure. I think a lot of that remains to be seen on the field because we haven't seen a whole bunch of Jacob Hood on the field during his time at Georgia. We've seen some of his reps from camp, from camps of like high school recruiting, but we haven't really seen what he's been on the field at Georgia. So in terms of my analysis is he's still a bit of a wild card, but he continues that just tradition of what Matt Rule and his staff love getting, and that's a guy with some sort of trait you cannot teach. And 6'8", 350, you can't teach that. Can they turn him into something? Matt Rule and his staff would say yes, but time will tell.
You can't coach size, right? I mean, you've heard coaches say that for years.
And I mean, look at his lower half. You look at his lower half, and it's a lot of weight in his lower half. He's got the legs that offensive line coaches dream about.
Sure.
So can they turn something into that, or of that into something? Maybe, but that's like the number one thing that stands out with me is he looks like he's got a lot of power in his lower half.
Rivals was there to make the first announcement. Brady Oltman's going to have some good coverage on this as well from Hail Varsity, but quoting Hood from our dear friend Greg Smith, quote, "The love from the coaches, the players, and the fans stood out, and it's also a great community. Rule's an amazing person. He definitely knows what he's talking about when it comes to football and developing great football players and even better young men on and off the field." So count them in your count voice from Sesame Street 1, 2, 3. You have Sherman at outside backer, Gilbert at tight end. And, of course, you added Betts and Garcia Castaneda over the end of last week. 11 additions from the SEC. That kind of goes into the topic of reset versus rebuild. And you have a reset from what you have on the roster now immediately with SEC talent and body types. Good enough guys to get into an SEC school and start molding. Nebraska's acquired many of those. So you had Hood as a 3 to 4 star prospect. He was just inside the Rivals 250 at 218 overall, and the number 19th ranked offensive tackle in the 2022 cycle. He's a Nashville kid. I forgot to add also that Auburn was in on him. But Rule and Raiola know how to develop. I don't doubt that. I know Donnie's not been in college a ton. He's more the NFL, but he knows what he wants in a finished product when working with NFL. So it really kind of comes down to coachability to me for a lot of these kids that are getting second starts in Lincoln. And if you trust a guy like Rule, you trust a guy like Donnie Raiola, then you're more apt to probably buy in, do what they say, and get with it. Do you think 350's end all be all, or do you think they try and slim him down to 320?
It really depends on what the offense looks like. I think that remains to be seen with what spring football looks like.
You can play at 350.
What they like the offensive line to look like.
You can play at 350, go for it.
Well, I think a bigger question is not how much body reshaping is still yet to be done. It's what did he get done in his year at Georgia? It was one redshirt season where you're buried on the depth chart. Did you use that as motivation in order to build up into what Georgia wants you to look like, or did you sit there stewing at the bottom of the depth chart, angry,
man, I should be playing,
mad that you're not playing, that, you know what, I'm bigger than all these guys, I think I'm better than all these guys? How much did he commit himself to that Georgia strength and conditioning program his year away? I think that's a much bigger indicator of how much playing time he's going to get than how much body reshaping is still needed. Because if you have a guy who you think is a very talented offensive lineman, I mean, we've talked to a lot of coaches before. It's the coach's job to find a way to get a guy onto the field. And if that means that, you know what, we're going to get him in spot duty right now and continue to reshape his body, that could mean something. But if you got a guy who's good enough to see the field now, I don't think what's remaining in body reshaping matters as much as what you have right now. You know,
think about the message this can send, and really from a gamble standpoint, Nebraska. Listen, they're bringing in a lot of guys. They want some hits. Obviously, you always do, be it portal, but you need that bridge to develop your high school kids you brought in that you think are really good projects you can work with. And think about kind of the buzz on the street. You've already got buzz with a lot of the national writers about Rule and what he's done. I mean, they're wowed by him, and he deserves that. He deserves that from his success at Temple. He deserves that from his success at Baylor. Clearly, from a roster standpoint, I know the NFL's a different beast, but he had some puzzle pieces in the right spot for Carolina to put a playoff run together. Right, just from a football guy, here's what I want with those quarterbacks, and from a personality standpoint, the connection is college. It feels like for Rule versus NFL. But if he can get a couple of guys to hit, think about what the word on the street will be in SEC circles. With say he gets a guy like Sherman or Gilbert to come in and kill it. Say he gets some of the guys on the roster to raise their level to a whole different game. I mean, that's what's really fascinating to see in this year one. What do you do out of the gate? Because it's not a rebuild. It's not by any stretch an easy or perfect situation. You've not gone bowling for 6 years, but you've done a nice roster makeover. You've infused a lot of talent, and you've been able to just work your butt off from a recruiting standpoint. So the development clock starts now with future classes.
And I think you're kind of hitting on a question here brought up by Elijah in the stream chat.
Not you.
Great name, though, Elijah. He was wondering what's more important, coaching or recruiting. He's had a discussion with his brother-in-law. That's the simplest way to put it. And I think you're kind of hitting that, you know what, for
chicken
now.
Or egg, bro.
For now, it's development. It's that coaching. What can you do with the guys you have on the roster? Once you get these guys to 9-3, 10-2, then recruiting becomes more important because you got to get that talent in here that you can then go and coach up. So, they go hand in hand. It starts with the coaching, and then it becomes recruiting, and then I'm with you. It's chicken or the egg.
We'll ask Coach McBride this in a little bit because I honestly believe it's coaching, but part of that coaching equation is projection and profiling. Are you profiling talent that is portable? Does that kid you see as a high school junior or senior that you think can play ball for you and give you some snaps turn into a Wistrom or a Tomich or a Peter? Or coaches will tell you, man, look, they make me look good. A lot of the coaches defer the credit to Yeah, you want to be a good coach, you get good players. I mean, Chuck's said that 100 times on the show over the decade plus he's been with us. But it does take that motivation, that refinement of their skills for the kids to reach their ceiling. So it's a hand-in-hand thing. You got to, but the piece of the coaching is being right with your projection and your profile.
Well, I would argue that they're maybe 60-40 on the coaching, because great coaching can clean up recruiting misses.
And Levante David can clean up a lot of...
But I wouldn't argue that great recruiting can clean up bad coaching.
It
can make it look better than it is, but great coaching can eliminate bad recruiting.
Both of them have janitor aspects.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally agree with you. We'll spend some time with Coach McBride on that. Jay Moore is going to talk some NFL with us. We'll also get into Ishmael Smith-Flores, tight end out of Arlington. Bob Wager striking again. This is a talent that he knows from, he coached down in Arlington. So Nebraska beats Iowa out for a tight end. That doesn't happen every day. We'll spend time with Jay Moore. More on recruiting. Good weekend for the Big Red with Jacob Hood and Ishmael Smith-Flores. Hail Varsity continues.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Jay Moore coming up in about an hour. We'll do a Blackshirt Monday, hour 2. Charlie McBride at 5. Jay Moore at 5:25 on Cincinnati's run, the NFL weekend. We'll stick with some more recruiting and Ishmael Smith-Flores, also reaction to Jacob Hood. And in the stream, it's a fascinating discussion. Brian has weighed in, Dion's checked in, Nick has had some thoughts, and this all kind of got kicked off a little bit earlier by Elijah asking the question about, is it coaching or is it recruiting? And just to reset here, and I love the conversations, Elijah. I'm going to assume it was over a ice-cold beer watching football this weekend. You had the argument with his brother-in-law, Jameis Winston, out of Florida State, willed his team to victory. I say coaching because Nebraska's had multiple years of top 25 recruiting classes, and they failed to produce. And that is frustrating for Nebraska fans. And the way I look at it is this with recruiting, and I kind of go back to Osborne to show my age, but I also go back to Osborne because of how elite he was and his staff was at recruiting. And you think in Nebraska for years and years and years, they were going 9-3, 10-2, and who was beating them? It was Oklahoma, and OU recruited at an elite level. Sometimes legally, bless them, okay, and sometimes not legally, and they're watching a bowl game, okay, because they're on probation. They're not on TV because they're on probation. But they had more dudes like Keith Jackson's, Jamel Holloway, Marcus Dupree. Nebraska did fine with Irving Fryer, Dean Steinkühler, Turner Gill, Tom Rathman. I mean, go down the list. They were all loaded. Difference is like, just as an example, with Oklahoma when it comes to recruiting and coaching. Oh, you'd throw those guys in as like freshmen or redshirt freshmen. They had guys that were just different, and they'd come in and ball, right? Nebraska'd lose to the Florida schools, and then Colorado kind of caught up with them. But for the most part, Nebraska, Osborne, his staff, they were so good at recruiting and then the development. They got a certain player that some were ready early, and it took more of the Broderick Thomases to convince, hey, play us early. We'll be okay. Let's play Steve Taylor early. He's damn good, okay? And eventually Nebraska shifted to that. Tommy Frazier played as a true freshman. But that wasn't always the norm. So Nebraska recruited at a high level. They developed at an even better level for decades as to what built the team you want Nebraska to get back to. As we talk here and now, Jameis Winston was an elite talent, as good a talent as he was to your argument with your brother-in-law, he was as equally a knucklehead. So there was some give and take, but he made that offense go, and once the Jameis Winstons of the world left Florida State, Jimbo Fisher got the hell out of Tallahassee because it was not even close to what he needed to have talent-wise. So above all, well, is it recruiting or is it coaching? It is going to be, I'm going to side coaching 60-40 just because of that talent identification needed. And if you miss on the identification, what do you do about it? That's also part of coaching.
Well, you mentioned Jimbo Fisher. Look at what Jimbo Fisher did this past year at Texas A&M. And I know it's been somewhat of a smaller sample size there at A&M, but he's doing great on the recruiting trail, and the results on the field aren't matching it because I guess you can't point to coaching specifically, but with all that collection of talent together, it's got to be something. And I don't think you can blame the 30 different 5-stars they have down at Texas A&M. I think there's something going on behind the scenes where you look at it and you go, well, coaching's more important, obviously. But then you also look back and you look what happened to TCU against Georgia in the national championship game, and you say, well, TCU was averaging mid-30s in their recruiting classes, and they just went up against a team that's been, number 1 or number 2 for about 6 straight years now. And the talent that Georgia just put on the field was so much better than what TCU had. And you go, recruiting's more important.
It doesn't lie.
It's a healthy mix between the two, and that, you know what, great coaching can make the 45th ranked recruiting class look closer to a top 15 recruiting class. It can get you to a conference championship game. It can win you 10, 11 games, but I don't think that 45th ranked recruiting class is going to win you a national title. But then again, you have great recruiting like you see at Texas A&M, and just because you have great recruits doesn't mean you're going to go make it to the national championship game. So there may not be a correct answer here at all, but I'm agreeing with you whenever it's case by case, but I'd venture to say 60-40 coaching to recruiting is probably the fair answer.
Listen, and what you may bring in a kid that has elite speed, an incredible first step, is as strong as pick some Greek god, okay? I mean, think of all the physical traits that help you win on a football field. May have the best arm you've seen, maybe a lightning quick. Are they coachable, and can they be patient? How do they handle struggle? How do they grow up? What's their maturity level like? I mean, all of that is the crap you got to deal with, aside from just calling a play on 3rd and 8. That's what you got to be nails with, is getting the buy-in and acceptance. Are you getting a kid that's coachable? He may have all the talent in the world, but is he coachable or not? And that, I think Jimbo's probably running. Yeah, dude, I'm picking out Rolls Royces. Awesome. We know they're fast. We know they're luxury. Are they going to break down? Does the gas mileage suck? I mean, it's not all perfect is what I'm getting at. And from a Nebraska standpoint, I think you want to get to a point here with this reset where you have talent that's equal or better than what you're facing, because this whole staff has studied the Big Ten. They know what they're getting into, and they know that they've got to be able to formulate an identity on both sides of the football to win ball games, right? And it's going to be centered around the lines of scrimmage. That's getting after the quarterback. That's running the football, and that's being able to sprinkle in some speed. I mean, they want to be fast, be faster than who they're facing, but above all, it's going to be meat and potatoes. So the assistants have studied the Big Ten. They have an idea of what they're going to be facing, and they know they're going to have to adjust and adapt on the fly.
Well, I like this comment in from Nick here on the recruiting versus coaching comment, because, I mean, you're talking Nebraska as the case study, but he says, I guess we'll have to go out to Boulder where Deion will answer the question of coaching versus recruiting for us over the next couple of years. And I think that's a very good take, in that Deion's unproven as a coach, at least a college coach. But he's got the recruiting acumen underneath his belt.
At this level. Power 5 level, yes, yeah, absolutely.
At the major college football level. So maybe that's a good place to get it answered. That's a great comment in from Nick. So, Nick, appreciate the comment. If you want to chime in, give us your thoughts, you can give us a call, 402-466-3776, or chime in on our live stream, Hail Varsity YouTube page, the Hail Varsity Twitter page, ESPN Lincoln on Twitter and Facebook as well, where you can check out the live stream. Recruiting or coaching, the great debate, what is going to power your team to
the heights you want to achieve. Ishmael Smith-Flores, let's spend a minute here. We kind of teased last segment. The other commit for Nebraska this weekend, the tight end, Bob Wager from Arlington, Texas. Martin, of course, Wager on staff. His pickup and connection, he was able to talk Ishmael to come play football for him in high school. And he's 6'5", he's 210. And you look at the why here. Why is Ishmael Smith-Flores, who's a Hawkeye legacy, his daddy was a high-level ball player for Iowa. Iowa was his first offer. And you look at all the Iowa tight ends doing work on Sundays and even into the postseason. Smith-Flores is going to be a flex tight end for Nebraska. His host for the recruiting visit was Thomas Fedoni, which was cool. And just some comments from Fedoni about Wager and Rule. Fedoni really likes what is here in Lincoln as far as the reason to get a guy like Smith-Flores. You want those matchup issues. You want to be able to move him around, get some mismatches on the defense. What made it work for Smith-Flores was the track record of Coach Rule, what he's done with player development, what they've done with guys to the league, and what he's done with football programs. And there's just trust. There's trust with your high school coach and Wager. There's trust with Rule. Wager left a great situation to come do his thing at the college level. The culture and the fan base, what Nebraska's all about. Those are all some comments from Smith-Flores. Good stuff from Brady Oltman's HailVarsity.com on that commitment. So, listen, two good gets for Nebraska, and they're not done. You still have the second signing day. But what did we talk about? Nebraska needed another body on the offensive line. They've got that. They've got more bodies to come off the edge. And the majority of these gets have been from the SEC or Power 5. I would say, 8 out of 10 from the SEC. Of course, a couple of Baylor gets and a Georgia Tech get. Who's on the horn?
Got John on the line.
John, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Smitty. Hey, I love the debate between coaching and recruiting. I remember Coach Eckler back in the day, Mike Eckler. He said one time, I remember him saying this, and he said, it's not the big fish that get away that kill you. It's the 5-year mistakes that are on your roster. It's just non-productive players. And so I totally think that is on the money. It's like, if you can get guys that will stay with you and develop and work hard and be productive in some way, shape, and form, that's a winner. And you eventually will get some of those, game changers. The Tommy Frazier, the Lawrence.
That's generational gets. We all know that, and yep. They are incredible, and to get them together is really incredible. But John, your point, and Eckler nailed it, and Eckler's been just a beast of a recruiter. Love the guy. He's right. You've got to have somebody doing something for your football team, and he may not start, he may not play, but is he good for you on the scout team? Or did you put enough time, energy, and resource in that, damn it, by year 4 he should give me something beyond taking up a locker spot and being a good dude. I mean, there's got to be he's got to do something on the field, but absolutely you can't whiff on a guy. There's a recruiting class. This is right after Sioux, where Nebraska lost. This is right after Sioux. I think it might have been 2011, where they didn't have one of those defensive linemen pan out. Not one. And I could walk down the names if my memory wasn't so jacked. But yeah, you just can't have that type of miss. And these were guys that did do, it was 3-4 year air quote mistakes. You don't want to be labeled a mistake as a recruit, do you? Ever. That hurts. That hurts, but it hurts the program because it's taken a spot.
Exactly right. And I think we're the toughest guys to find, and I think Nebraska is really a litmus test for it, are the guys in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
I really think you can find skill guys pretty much all over the place, but boy, it's hard to find athletic big guys.
Yep.
So,
John, thank you so much for the phone call, bud. We're up against it. Good insight. More thoughts with Hail Varsity as we continue.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, if you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to more of your phone calls. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Big thanks to many of you chiming in here on the stream. Can watch the show, participate. Email Chris at HailVarsity.com, 466-3776, 800-825-5865, and different ways to watch the show. Chris at HailVarsity.com is the email. But the streams are aplenty for you. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Facebook and Twitter with ESPN Lincoln, and the Hail Varsity YouTube. Check that Twitter. Hail Varsity YouTube, yes. The Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. I will get my bleep together at HVarsity Radio. But we're talking the topic of, what's most or more important, right? What's the percentages say? Is it recruiting? Or is it coaching? Pete's been on hold. Pete, go ahead. Thanks for the phone call.
How you doing today?
Good. What do you say?
Well, definitely coaching. I can give you several examples. A coach that can see a kid's size and see how he can develop in 2 years is coaching more than talent. It's talent that's undeveloped. If a coach has got rules and he sticks by those rules for everyone, makes a big difference. How many kids will fit into your process and excel in your process is critical. Bringing kids in that love football and love to work is critical. I believe coaching is a huge impact. I believe you can win with a little lesser talent. If you look at Osborne in the 80s, he wasn't the most talented team, but he was right up there playing for national championships. We didn't win them because we didn't have the talent and the process to go together. But once he got the talent in the 90s, you could see what he did with it. So I believe it's coaching.
Pete, totally get you. No, that's kind of where I'm leaning as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the phone call.
But I think you can always make the counter argument is if we give Matt Rule and his staff a team of 22 Elijah Herbels, they're probably not going to win many games no matter how hard they coach me up.
Well, no, that's true. I mean, you got a bunch of try-hards and you got some dudes. And listen, you at least got on the field, so I'm not throwing shade or smoke at you. Here's the other example.
But I'm not Division I by any means. That's why I'm here.
We can kind of roll our eyes too. Here's the one of many teams, but here's the one team some dude can point to. Right, and God bless Larry Coker and his career. Uncle Fester is what we called him 20 years ago. But the guy who took over for Miami, you would talk about getting gifted that 01 Miami team, that 02 Miami team. Like, Uncle Fester just stayed the hell out of the way, didn't screw it up.
Don't crash the Ferrari.
No, don't breathe on it, right? Just rub it with a diaper and let them go do their thing, because if they're motivated and locked in, yeah. They're going to go annihilate anybody and everybody they play.
Just stop them from recording rap songs on the 9th floor of their dorm and you're good. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, old Greg Olson still regrets that moment and that move, but Greg Olson didn't even see the field for quite a while. We'll have some more NFL thoughts here as Zach Taylor and Cincy on to another AFC Championship game. And a reminder about getting buckled up, right? This time of year, any time of year, vital for you to stay safe. Using your seatbelt saves lives, prevents injuries. Only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Who's with us?
We go to Paul in Lincoln.
Paul, go for it. Thanks for calling.
Hey, guys. The best example, I think, of a coach over recruiting, look at Oklahoma in 2000. Rod Stoops takes over a program that was just mediocre at best, goes undefeated. He moved a few players around. He could see the talent that was on the roster that just hadn't been developed correctly or being used correctly, and he turns it into a national championship that first year.
It was, I think, year 2 for Stoops. He
Was it 2 or 1?
It was second year. But John, Brother John, that was there before he got there, he had guys on the wrong side of the ball, but he had elite talent he had recruited.
Yeah.
He had recruited at a high level. He just couldn't coach it appropriately.
Closer to home, you could go to that transition between Callahan and Pelini, where Callahan had a whole bunch of talent sitting on that roster, and then Pelini's able to orchestrate a quick turnaround because he came and coached that talent up. I mean, that's an example closer to home. It didn't have the same national championship implications.
You had the recruiting base there of dudes, but you were never able to tap into their full potential until Stoops got there, Pelini got there, and you saw what 09 was specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Paul, thanks for the phone call, bud.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Yep, good stuff from Paul. But no, I mean, Oklahoma's that's case in point. It takes both, but the scale is to me slightly, maybe a little more than slightly. We've had more input and feedback where talent wins, and that's what you're trying to get is high-level elite talent, but it's got to be coachable, and you got to be able to coach it. Well, coaches say, if I get somebody like a Grandy Gregory, my as Kaz's take, my job is just not to screw him up. Well, he didn't. He did a good job coaching him and those guys up. But the point is this: don't let him waste away and never. Man, why didn't we see more of X, Y, and Z? There's that guy too on your football team. For years, there's been examples of that recently with Nebraska, where the guy goes on or goes somewhere else. Not all the time, but you're wondering why somebody's a better pro than they are a college guy.
Yeah, and
Terrell Davis at Georgia comes to my mind.
I also look, closer to home at Nebraska. You look at Wandale's success going off to Kentucky, where you kind of looked at yourself and you said, man, was Wandale just the guy that wasn't fit for the Big Ten?
Well, no, Wandale should have been carrying the ball 30 times up the middle.
And that's coaching. But the talent's there.
It's decision-making.
and I guess that's where I'm coming is, you know what? I'm probably going to err against on the side of coaching over recruiting, because you can get lucky on the recruiting trail. You can luck your way into some talent that you didn't think that they were as good as they ended up being. You can't luck your way into coaching up talent. If you're going to turn a guy into something, there's no luck involved with that. It's hard work and knowing what you're doing as a coach to be able to take a guy who's, he's got some flashes in high school, where turn him into an all-conference type guy. There's no luck in that. Whereas you can go find a guy on the recruiting trail and some coach tells you about some kid you never heard of before, and you say, well, I trust my guy. I'm going to send out an offer, and this kid turns into an all-conference kid. There can be a little bit of luck there, and it comes with coaching, I guess, as well. So recruiting's important, but coaching is the be-all, end-all. You can eliminate bad recruiting with coaching. You can't eliminate bad coaching with recruiting, in my humble opinion.
It's going to be fascinating to hear Coach McBride. I'm anxious to talk to him, too, a little bit here about recruiting ties, right? Let's talk a little bit here about how some of those are formed. We know some of the Rule backstory with guys he's elevated with their career and their coaching journey, but just how are you able to have a connection? And it's fascinating. I know with Coach McBride, he's always got his ears open in Arizona, in his hometown of Chicago, and people in Kansas City. But that's who's on the horn to you about a guy you got to come see. Do you take the time to listen? Do you get him to Lincoln? Right? A lot of that has gone on for years. We'll wind down hour one. Hail Varsity, we're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. How did I fare versus Elijah in the steak and the beer bets? The tallies on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
You take a break, pay some bills, you come back, and hey, there's another commit. As let's tell you about him, as Bob Wager strikes again from Martin High School in Arlington. Good story and write-up with HailVarsity.com. Brady Oltman's here. Jeremiah Charles, wide out from Wager's team last year, announcing that he is all in. This was on Twitter. after a great visit to the University of Nebraska. I enjoyed the hospitality and the atmosphere. With that being said, I am blessed to say I am 111, not 110, 111% committed. Go Big Red, hashtag GBR, hashtag committed at Coach Rule. Nebraska, one of two schools, along with North Texas. After Charles, he's 6'2", kind of an unranked composite guy, but this goes to the projection and fit discussion, and it goes to the track explosiveness, the speed that Nebraska wants. And it's another wide receiver here for 2023, along with Jaden Doss, Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd.
And it also speaks, I'd say, to Matt Rule and his trust of his coaching staff. You know what? This guy is unranked in the composites, and
composites problem.
And no other Power Fives are off him. But my new assistant coach, Bob Wager, says this guy can ball, so I'm going to say he can ball too, and I'm going to extend the offer. It speaks a little bit to that trust in your own coaching staff that Matt Rule's preached, not only here at Nebraska, but in previous stops as well.
24 signees for 2023, 34 transfers, and Nebraska's ranking, to keep that with the discussion point, 25th in composite rankings. So do you get that 25th ranked class to achieve a mid-teens ranking when it comes to how they finish? Does your top 25 recruiting class finish in the top 10, top 5? You're more likely to have it finish somewhere in the top 20. That would be the hope if you're Nebraska. And Coach Rule's had a good history of that, where he's had some of his recruiting classes in the 40s and 30s. Those teams have finished ranked. I believe the Baylor team that went on to go to a New Year's Day 6 that he was not a part of, but he recruited, that was just on the verge there of going to win a conference championship, the infamous Oklahoma State-Baylor Big 12 championship game, where Baylor just fell short. That class was ranked somewhere in the 30s. So it's getting a high level of achievement based on what you get. Nick isn't wrong. I think if you get 5 stars and buy-in, that's when you become Georgia and Alabama. Pretty good. We're going to get to the phones here, time permitting. Also, Charlie McBride's in 10 minutes. What do we have here with our steak and beer?
Well, there was something interesting that you did with your picks last week, Schmitty. Do you remember what you did?
I went over.
No, you went overs on every single game, which was interesting because every single game went unders this weekend. Yet, you still managed to beat me.
Wow.
I missed all 4. I picked the Chiefs, the Giants, the Bills, and the Cowboys. None of those 4 teams covered.
So as far as against the spread, I nailed them.
Against the spread, you hit the Jags, you hit the Bengals, and you hit the San Francisco 49ers.
So I was 3 of 4, but I got hosed on the overs.
Yeah, and I just hit the unders on 2 games, and I missed my picks on all 4. So you are the rightful winner for this weekend's steak and a beer bet.
So don't listen to me with overs, unders, but I'm kind of halfway decent with calling
by our powers combined.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. More from you guys in the stream as we're live on Facebook and Twitter. Also, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. It is that time. We love catching up with Coach, the Hall of Famer, the legend, Mr. Blackshirt himself. A Monday with Charlie, Coach Charlie McBride with us. Coach, how many wings did you eat?
All of them.
Well, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. You won't get into specifics. You don't want to go there. I like it. But wings and football. Did you have a good weekend watching some NFL?
Yep, I watched NFL. This is the first time I really had a chance to sit down and watch both, the two games, and it's kind of right now it's kind of crazy because, one team you got a sort of a quarterback who's playing well, but he's, if he'd played better, he could take him to the prizes. But I think when it gets down to the real tough stuff, it might be tough for him. But I was surprised kind of a little bit with Buffalo, but I was for the Bengals.
Sure.
I mean, because it's I think we got the quarterback coach in there and stuff like that. We've got a couple of players and.
You got the Burrows there, of course. You got Cam Taylor-Britt, Zach Taylor. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Nebraska flavor.
Yeah, and Britt's doing a good job. I mean, he, I always said this, that guy in the NFL will not be a corner. But I think he's playing corner, but I think when they get around to it, he's going to be a safety. Because that guy knows he goes after the ball, and that's when you're a safety, you have to be kind of one of those kind of guys. And he's got height, and he's long and stretched out, and he's got good arm length, and he's got some. He might not be the corner that you're looking for speed wise, but but he's a good player.
He's a really good player. Pretty fun scene for him, too, after the game, as he's got the interception. He had 2 pass breakups and interception, I think 7 tackles, and really did a wonderful job on Diggs, Buffalo's stud wide receiver. Just was very physical with him. And Cam's always been good coming up and making plays in the run game, even at Nebraska. Yeah. And he got emotional when he was, interacting with the Cincinnati fans that made the trip. I mean, that's probably the first big win he's had. I mean, think about this. I mean, the guy's played his butt off for a lot of years in Lincoln, and he gets drafted to Cincinnati, overcomes an injury, and hey, Cam, go hook up with Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. In a monster playoff game, and he was overcome with emotion, understandably so, because he felt proud, right? He felt proud about what he was able to help the team do.
Yeah, well, he's the kind of kid that you want to have. I think he's a pretty good. I haven't been around the kid, but I think he's a good leader, and I think that he attracts people, because he's so. Well-spoken, when he comes out, we got guys that we had, I mean, I won't name names, but we had some kids that I've coached some kids that, they talk to you, but when they get into the public or they get into the press, it's kind of dull.
So there's some charisma with Cam, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that helps a little bit. But, I was really happy for him.
Coach Charlie McBride's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And, Coach, let's dive into a topic that we've been hitting most of the first hour, and that's the conversation surrounding recruiting and coaching in terms of which is more important to the long-term success of a football program. Is it being able to bring in talent and get those 5 stars and 4 stars, get them on campus and on the field? Or is it coaching? Is it how you take those guys that you do eventually get on campus and turn them into something? Well, what do you think is more important in terms of building a successful winning football team?
Well, I tell you what, I have two different coaches, and both of them are as successful as there is. One was Woody Hayes, and one's Tom. Mm-hmm. And Woody Hayes told me when I was a young coach, he said, Charlie, you want to be a good coach? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, get good players. That was the first thing. Well, that kind of connected when I sat down with Tom when I first went to Nebraska. He said, I have 3 things that I want you to do. He said, This is your job description, basically. And number 1 is recruiting, and number 2 is coaching, and number 3 is if you cheat, you're fired. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of straight out. So both coaches put recruiting first. In other words, Woody Hayes was saying to you, you got to be a good recruiter. You got to get good players. And they've been in a situation, I think, when people start looking at recruiting and don't understand how good a job these guys, all of them. I mean, I think some of these coaches, even the ones some of them that we've gotten fired, have not, I think in the past, have not been willing to go after the 5 stars. They think, well, we're not going to get them here. You may not, but once you get 1 or 2 of them, hang in there, because they're going to talk the other guys into coming. They're the kind of guys you want around recruiting. And, so I think recruiting is the number 1 thing. And these guys know what they're doing.
Charlie McBride's with us. Coach, let's take that topic of getting good talent to developing, and that's the thing, and that's what your friend and buddy Saban's done. That's what Kirby Smart's doing. He's getting the best of the best. That's what Ohio State's been doing. That's what Clemson's been doing. About 4 or 5 programs, right?
Sure.
They've got the best there is. They're in a great recruiting area. Nebraska's always had to recruit nationally. You guys have done that. You've brought in high-level talent, and by the time they got done in Lincoln, through their work and through your work, a lot of times you're winning the Big 8 or winning the Big 12 or having a very successful season. The coaching element, the projection part, tell me how difficult or easy that is, seeing what a kid can become and then getting them to that finish line.
Well, I think the thing you have a lot of times when you're talking about now it's a different deal. Some guys are going to be looking for the money, and
right.
That's not going to be so much the school. So it's a little different than when I was. But assuming that isn't that they're all going to get something. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way. and if they're satisfied with that, then I'd say you got some pretty good character kids, because they want to play football, they want to have some fun, and they want to go to a place they want to be at. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think's important. And the other thing is a lot of times it seems to me that sometimes coaches say, well, we can't get these guys, so we got to go after these guys and develop them. Well, we did that, but we also had some 5 stars, I'll tell you that, that played for us that were good from the start. And, you don't get kids. I mean, Ralph Brown, for example, Mike Brown, both of them are 5-star players. I mean, Mike was the defensive and offensive player of the year in Arizona. So, I mean, that's not a 3-star guy,
And 3 Pro Bowls in the NFL and a Super Bowl. You're right. You're right.
And Ralph started from day one.
Yeah.
We've only had a couple guys ever do that. So, it's something that you can't be afraid of. But what happens is a lot of these kids have some connection to Nebraska. A lot of these 5-star kids that you're looking at have some connection, whether their mother grew up here or went to school here or did all kinds of mm-hmm. stuff. And a lot of times, if you're afraid to go after it, I mean, you can find out right away. A lot of kids I've gone to it said, Coach, I'm going to stay close to home. With my family is a big deal, and that's it. And there's a lot of guys that want to, go to a place and enjoy themselves and play where they, they've been home all the time, and they want to go somewhere where they can, have fun, get new friends and things like that. So there's so many different things to draw a kid to a university. And like I said, you've heard the same thing. Like guys, well, the kid that committed and then the next day he turned around, or a couple of days, and went to Oklahoma. Well, he even said it himself that he was so fired up. We had such a good visit at Nebraska, but when he got home, a couple of days and time to think, it kind of wore off, and he looked like, well, maybe Oklahoma's a better spot for me or something like that. So, you don't know what's going to draw a kid to you unless you try. I mean, most of the kids the character kids are going to tell you, Coach, I'm going to stay here. I've always told the players, I've always told the parents, if you have more than 3 schools, if you can't tell me that when you were in high school and you were a senior and nobody did anything about recruiting and you picked out 3 schools that were in your heart, you thought about, sometimes it changes, but a lot of times that's what he's been thinking about. Nate Turner was a good example. I walked in the house and he's the number 1 receiver in the country. And right away, his dad wants him to go to Notre Dame, and he's close. He's an electrician. He works downtown, and he was on the Sears Tower building that thing, and the mother had a job close by. But the thing was that she told me that she wants him to do what he wants to do, and he told me he wants him to go to Notre Dame. Well, she already told me that. Well, I walk out. This is the first time I ever met the kid. I mean, I met him the first time, was really talked to him.
Nate Turner, just for our listeners that may not know, is an elite wingback for Nebraska, played for the Bills for 100 years.
Right. And Nate is, I went outside and I said to Nate, I said, I'll come back and everything. And he said, Coach, he came out, it was about 2 degrees outside. He had a T-shirt on. He comes walking out to the car with me. I said, what are you, crazy or something? He said, no, Coach, I want to tell you, I'm coming to Nebraska. I about fell out of my shoes. And, he said, well, Coach, he said, I'll tell you, one of the things that it's always been, Nebraska's always been my favorite school. He said, we were kids watching the Oklahoma-Nebraska game, and then we'd go out, and I'd always be on the Nebraska team, And so that's how things happen. And I recruited a kid in Kansas City who's coming to Nebraska, and all of a sudden Texas got in on him, and he was born in Texas. And I lost him. Yeah. I mean, so there's things that come up that anywhere, can come up, and Tom always did a good job in the house, especially with the mothers. They knew that he's so honest and truthful. I mean, you can't beat that, and and that helps when the head coach comes in and seals it. That's the main thing.
You beat old Holtzy out for him, didn't you, at Notre Dame?
Who?
Said you beat Lou Holtz out for Nate Turner, didn't you?
I know you probably. I don't know. I don't remember who it was. And I don't even think about that. And the other thing in recruiting, I never mentioned another school.
Yeah, that's true.
And I always talk to if you understand in recruiting what a coach will come in and badmouth, say Nebraska, and he's from X university. And he'll badmouth him. And I warned him about that. And I said, anything that he says that you want to find out about, you call me, and I'll give you the answer to it. And the thing is, the other thing is the fathers are usually good at this. They usually say, well, you know a lot about Nebraska. When did you coach there?
That's pretty good.
I said, ask them when they coached there to know all this stuff, and they don't. They can't answer that right good, and when they do, they put their foot in their mouth, and it hurts them.
Yeah. Coach,
and so I've never been a guy that goes in and says, Michigan State's a dump. You don't want to go there.
Coach,
because he may love it.
That's good. We'll catch up next Monday. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for the time, Coach.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. Thanks for having me. Okay, bye now.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity, and we're presented by Currency. Some Husker thoughts, some NFL takes from the playoff weekend. We welcome in Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore at JMoore44 on Twitter. Jay, long time no see. How we doing on a Monday?
Yeah, good to chat with you again. It was good to watch a little football with you yesterday, Schmitty. It's been a minute, and but it's good overall. For a Monday, I'll take it.
We just huddle up for a Cincinnati playoff game, which is cool because that means your roommate Zach Taylor's been getting into the playoffs pretty regularly, and no hiccup in Buffalo where it felt like destiny belonged to the Bills, right? They have built up. They have been knocking on that Super Bowl door, and Jay, the Bengals had other thoughts. Just your quick impression of the game plan Zach and the offensive coordinator Callahan put together. I mean, this thing was a blowout.
Yeah, obviously, not surprised by any means, but I do think I thought it was going to be a closer game, as did a lot of people. But just the ability for Cincinnati to run the ball, 172 total yards rushing, the 1-2 punch of Mixon and Pirine, and that was just they were just tough to stop. And then you just threw in the nice, intermediate passing game of Joe Burrow to his receivers. It wasn't, in those conditions, it's hard to stretch the field. They tried to a couple times, but they just kind of gave what the defense was taking, and that's just kind of what Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor, their offenses do. They'll take their shots here, every now and then. But hey, we're okay, getting Chase, on a 8-yard comeback route and getting T. Higgins, on a 8-yard, out route, and we're just gonna chip away, and we're gonna own that time possession. We're gonna move the football, and we're gonna rely on our defense. It's pretty dang good as well. So, rather surprised that the game turned out the way it is, but Cincinnati just kind of found their way this year. They started off rather slowly. Joe was just getting, he had to come and had him for all angles early in those first couple of games where they lost this early this year. But they found their way, and they know who they are, and that ability to run the ball up there against a Buffalo defense who now I do forget they are without Von Miller, and I just would like to know if that defense would have been quite a bit better with Von Miller on the edge, but it isn't. They don't have him. He was hurt his knee, so their ability to kind of take a makeshift offensive line, because they've had some injuries as well, and just go up there and do what they did. I think Burrow was only sacked one time. Had a couple pressures there, here and there. That's going to happen in the playoffs, but just the ability to run the ball and hold Buffalo's offense to 10 points. I mean, that's baffling as well. That's crazy. I mean, I don't know when the last time. I don't think Buffalo's ever scored that low point total since Josh Allen has been there. And then, interesting to see how things kind of shake out for Buffalo here in this offseason. Obviously with Dayball heading up to with the Giants this past year, so their offense kind of struggled a little bit at times this year. But Cincinnati, I got to tell you what, take my hats off to them and how they perform, man. And they are hot. And it seems like this team plays better on the road. That's what they did last year. Beat the Raiders last year in wild card, and went to Tennessee and beat the Titans, and then divisional obviously went to Kansas City, where they'll be at again this year. So it's gonna be a heck of a Sunday watching them go down to KC again.
Now, Jay, my mind after watching that game yesterday goes back to a quote from Matt Rule at the opening press conference. That's that he wants to build a team that's constructed for the weather in which his team plays. And that's kind of where my mind went yesterday. Do you think that was the difference between the Bengals and the Bills, that the Bengals have a team that's been constructed to win in the elements? This is now the second straight year they've gone in. Whenever January rolls around, it seems like they're playing their best football. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Buffalo could not run the football. They got to figure that out as well. And Josh Allen has been such an integral part of that run game. I know they did it a couple times, but mainly I think he only had like 27 total yards running. I know he was getting hit left and right, but he did a good job escaping a lot of pressures and getting rid of it when he could. But yeah, they just couldn't run the football. That's Buffalo's problem. And they know they're going to play in conditions. They know once October rolls around, they're going to play in some pretty tough conditions up in upstate New York. So that was very surprising. But I'll say it was more surprising though for the Bengals to be able to run the football the way they did, because they've lost offensive linemen all over the place this year. They were trying to get Andrew Whitworth to come out of retirement almost to try to come and play for them. So that was just their ability to do that in those conditions at home against a really good Buffalo team. It's very, very surprising. And like I said, they are playing their best football. Hopefully they keep carrying this thing on into Kansas City and hopefully into Phoenix for the Super Bowl.
One of the Bengals writers for The Athletic did just a wonderful kind of post-mortem of this win. And Buffalo, I should say, Buffalo's been patted on the back all year, right? You were 13 seconds away. And then there's Cincinnati where, hey, that was a fun Cinderella run, and you might be a playoff team moving forward, but you know what? We don't expect too much of you because it's really Kansas City and Buffalo's division. Well, Cincinnati's been keeping receipts of disrespect, as it's been titled in this column, and speak a little bit to what makes Zach Taylor tick. Your roommate, your dear friend, head coach of Cincinnati. A guy that, by the end of a game, even at Nebraska, you're like, man, what a gamer, what a ball player, what a tough SOB. And, there's talent with all those traits. And he's carried it forward through his coaching life. And he's working his way, if not already, to one of the top coaches in the NFL with what he's done. Yeah, he has talent. They've drafted well. But he knows what he's wanted to do from a construction standpoint, and that's build with defense, have a run game, and then have some elite guys. I mean, that receiving crew is incredible, but yet they're always willing to be run first, even with a guy like Joe Burrow. It's interesting in that they have Joe Burrow and those receivers, and it does not feel like their offense is predicated upon those guys. That's what I think is incredible about this Bengals team right now. Yeah, I mean, it's Jay. It's so mature. It's the best word I can tag with this Cincinnati mindset offensively. Is they know what their formula is to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they do, and they know they are. And if you're going to take away Jamar Chase, well, who's covering T. Higgins? If you want to take away those two, okay, then you got Hayden Hurst, the tight end, who caught a couple of nice balls and one for a touchdown yesterday. So they have multiple weapons. I know Jamar Chase gets all the attention, but I think he's been really, really good. Hayden Hurst, I know there's other wide receivers I can't think of off the top of my head, but then obviously you go Mix and P. Ryan, that 1-2 combo, that they're able to just commit to the run game. And they've struggled at times running the ball this year, just like everyone else has. But they know, and that's the beauty about playoff football. It's the purest of it all, and it comes down to who can run the football and who can get stops on defense. And that's exactly what Cincinnati did. You just look to how most of these playoff games. It's just the same down the board. Okay, who can run the football and who's able to get off the field on third down and create turnovers and get stops. And that's going to be football for as long as for as long as this game's going to be around. That's just going to be the 1-2 punch. That's the recipe for sustainable programs, whether it's in college or the NFL. But to Zach, he is one of the most down to earth human beings. I've said that multiple times. but I think the guy has carried a chip on his shoulder from day one. And, coming out of Norman, Oklahoma, wasn't very highly recruited, went to Wake Forest, left there after his freshman year, goes to Butler, community college, and Butler was really, really good. And they might have won a JUCO national championship there. I don't remember, but I feel like between Zach and Kenny Wilson and Franz Hardy, a bunch of them just came up to Nebraska all at one time. So I know they were really good. And he just developed. And he was he has this competitiveness about him that is pretty quiet. You don't know that, but until you get amongst it. And he is the dude. He runs hot, and it's you don't know it a lot of times, but you'll see it every now and then when a referee makes a bad call or something. It starts to show. But then you got to see a little bit of what I love about Zach too is his comments, after the game. And it's like, you know what, I'm sorry guys, you keep screwing up your plans. I know you had all this neutral site game plan. You're trying to line up coin toss people and all these things and do this and that. And we just keep screwing it up. I'm sorry. And just the sarcasticness is just because he knows that they were hoping for that Buffalo, Kansas City neutral site game, and if the injury to Hamlin doesn't happen, there's probably, Cincinnati easily could have been the 2 seed, but they kind of the whole coin flip thing and all that. So they know what's going on. They know that they've been slighted, and Zach's taking that chip on his shoulder that he's had, and he's taking along with them, and he's giving it to his team as well. They know that not too many people expect him to be in this position, how you alluded to earlier, and not too many people expect him to go to Buffalo and win, and they did it handily, and I've loved his comments after the game. Just shows you it's a very quiet. He's very quiet, humbled, but he has the inner fire that all great college quarterbacks have, and great head coaches have to have, because you have to be calm under at the surface, but inside there's got to be something else going in a fire that's burning, and Zach definitely has that. And I think he just kind of displayed that a little bit, nothing too crazy, but just enough to say like, hey, we know what you guys are saying about us. We hear things. Our apologies that we keep messing up your plans, but we're going to keep on doing what we're doing, and we plan to go ruin some plans in Kansas City next weekend.
Jay Moore with us at Hail Varsity Radio, Blackshirt Husker NFLer. Jay Moore we'll have more with Jay on the NFL playoffs. Jay, a longtime vet, played with the Rams, Cowboys, Titans, and, of course, drafted by the 49ers. We'll get into San Fran, Jay's team, coming up. But unique relationship, and Jay's always been awesome to give us some time on his buddy and dear friend Zach Taylor. Continues his run in Cincinnati. More with Jay Moore in the NFL Weekend next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Jay Moore is with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Zach Taylor, Jay's roommate, dear friend, college teammate, Cincinnati onto the AFC title game again. What, a little bit further on that alter ego? Like, just give me a little bit more on Zach. Is he a screamer, or is it just kind of like he's got a crazy look in his eye like Harry and Dumb and Dumber?
No, he's a guy that when you talk, you better listen, because he means it. He's not a BSer. He's not a super chatty guy, but when he says something, he means it. He's not full of himself. He doesn't say things just to say them. He means it when he says it, and that's why I think his ability as a coach. That's why it does so well in the NFL, because you can get some guys that can talk it very, very well, but they might not be able to live it, or it's kind of one of those do as I say, not as I do type of situations. And I think Zach is he's just a phenomenal human being, a great family man. Him and his wife Sarah are two outstanding people, raising great family. And that's what's first and foremost most important to him. It's not about, hey, look at me. He's not on social media, like I said. He's not doing commercials. But he still has that ability to command a room, command his team, have control of his staff, but also have freedom to his staff. Let his guys. He's not a micromanager. He just lets his guys go do his thing. You can see his team. They play loose. I mean, out there doing snow angels and just having fun when they play. And so it's a perfect mix of just everything. That's why I think he's had so much success, is because it's just, okay, let's let my coaches coach to their best ability. Let's put our players in the best spot every game to win in whatever way possible, and we're going to have fun doing it. And if it doesn't work, I'll take the blame for it, and we'll go and create something else. And he's not too hard-headed, not too stubborn to know when it's wrong and he needs to change. And I think you've seen that along his coaching career as well. So just a great mix of everything. And not surprised, his family, he comes from an awesome family. His mom and dad were two outstanding people as well. So it's pretty cool just to see the evolution of Zach and what he's become, because first and foremost, he is such a great human being and a great person. But to see that fire that he had, I saw at Nebraska, come out here and just, he's becoming one of the best coaches in the NFL.
Jay, your 49ers able to outlast Dallas. Philly is up next. We'll wrap the NFL here with some thoughts on San Fran here this weekend.
Yeah, what a game. I kind of thought it was going to be a rather low-scoring game there with those two defenses going. And that just kind of came down to, San Francisco creating the turnovers. And, Dak, we saw the Dak that we kind of you see at times. It just careless with the ball. I mean, he could have gotten – there was a couple more instances where he threw into some coverages, and that one late in the game, he almost had – it should have been a pick six. The linebacker stepped right in front of, I think, a tight end and almost took it in there. But I was, it was it was too close to call there for a minute. I didn't know which way that game was going. You get 6-3. Maher's field goal gets blocked. You got all that, the Maher stuff come out again, and then San Francisco kind of keeps chipping away, fights back 9-6. At half, and then boom, they get a touchdown. And can't remember what the 19-12, I think, I believe the final score was. And they run that crazy play at the end of the game. I don't know what the heck that was they were thinking of that one. But yeah, just about what you thought. Two of the best defenses in the NFL battling out, and I think the better team won in that game. And it's going to be a heck of a battle in Philly next week at 2:00 on Sunday. It's going to be with that defense and the playmakers San Francisco has, even though they're playing, with a rookie 7th-round pick quarterback, and just seeing what they're able to do and hang with that high-flying, super powerful, Philadelphia Eagles team. I mean, they're stacked defensively and offensively. So it's gonna be an epic one.
Jay, in a potential 49ers versus Bengals Super Bowl, if it comes to that, have you thought about who you're going to be rooting for?
Yeah, that's a tough one, but I'll have to go with the Bengals on that one because you want to talk about chips on your shoulder, San Francisco did fire me, so I still have that one. Even though they drafted me, they gave me the opportunity, but they did fire me. So I still have to if it's one of those blood is thicker than water in this type of situation, I'll have to go with, even though Zach's not blood, but it's damn close. So I'll be cheering on Zach and just the other, with this my relationship with the Burrow family, being at Nebraska when I was there, and then Stanley Morgan, still on the team. So there's a lot of Nebraska connections on the Cincinnati side. So I'd definitely be leaning heavy Bengals.
I'm shocked Kansas City's favored, but they are. Now, that could change between now and kickoff on Sunday. Cincinnati just seems on a roll, but just when you think you have things pegged in the NFL, you get a bit of a surprise. Jay, to say goodbye, Nebraska football, of course, that second signing day looms next week. You did a lot of signing day Wednesdays with us over the years. Nebraska could add as many as 40 new faces. And how do you juggle and manage all of that? I guess is my question moving forward with Rule, because you're gonna have some attrition, but man, you're going hard and heavy after a certain athletic type and recruiting area in this short time you've been in charge.
Yeah, not surprised. You're going to have some attrition come, whether after winter conditioning going to spring ball or after spring ball with transfers and guys just kind of seeing, what's written on the wall for them at that time frame. I think that's part of it. And I think they'll be able to see just the cuts or whatever it is, that they might just be saying, hey, you're just not what we want or what we're looking for. I know that rarely happens at Nebraska, but I think that could be part of it as well. But mainly I think They're going to put these guys through quite the ringer in winter conditioning and spring ball. And I don't think it's going to be anything like we saw when Bill Callahan got here, because I think there was almost 200 guys in the football team when Bill got here, and he was like, this is not manageable, and rightfully so. It's super hard, and I get, it takes a lot of people off because of the walk-on program. That was part of it. But he put us through, before we went to spring ball, before we went to spring break, they put us through a 2-week grinder. You want to call it the Hell Week. Obviously nothing close to the Hell Week that the Navy SEALs face, but they tried to make it as close as possible. It was working out at 6 a.m. You had to be at the stadium by 4:30 in the morning to get taped. You did that. You had to go to class. You had to come back and lift. And we did that for 5 days in a row. Got the weekend off. And did it again for another 5 days in a row. I believe over 60 guys quit in that time. So wouldn't be surprised in a similar situation. A lot of head coaches come in and do that. It's kind of a cleaning house. Let's see who really wants to be here. Let's push their limits. I think Bo had a similar situation. When he got here back in 2008 as well. So a lot of guys just want to push these guys to the limits of who really wants it. And you're going to, I would imagine throughout winter conditioning and spring ball, that's going to be front and heavy with Matt Rule and his staff. He wants to find out who wants to be here and play football and get better and win some football games, and who likes just being on the football team and getting some free gear every now and then and saying I'm on the football team. That's what he's trying to separate now. And I think recruit the guys that you want, and then obviously more than what you can have on scholarship, but then knowing that you're going to have some attrition, boom, you just kind of plug and replace, and then you're building a roster, and you're heading into fall camp with guys who you think can help your team going forward to win.
Jay Moore with us, Husker Blackshirt NFLer and Big Red Wrap-Up co-host. Find him on Twitter at JMoore44. Jay, we'll see how things shake out this weekend with Kansas City and San Fran. Thanks for the time today.
Yep, you got it. Thanks, fellas.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, just recapping a busy recruiting day. Jacob Hood announcing his commitment, offensive tackle. Georgia transfer is in. You have the commitment from Ishmael Smith Flores. He is all good to go for the Big Red. And Elijah, you have Jeremiah Charles, wide receiver, the second player from Arlington High. Coach, of course, making that happen. Bob Wager, 2 for 2 with his former players. And then you get Hood in the mix. So good Monday for Nebraska. The recruiting visit weekend paid off. You had a lot of the white on white going with the unis and some snow angels at the stadium with the snowfall.
And which brings up a very, very, very important question, Schmitty. Should Nebraska bring back the white on white uniforms to away games moving forward?
Never. Surrender whites, never.
I kind of like them.
I think they look great.
That's my hot take of the day.
No, they look incredible. You just don't win in them. The record in them, like the alternate uniform, iced whites, matted white, you won at Northwestern.
Yeah.
Right? You almost had a great comeback against Miami in 2015.
Well, but
whatever the players want, dude. That's what I'm saying. Don't let me be old guy. I can't do it. But a lot of the former players lose their mind because they, at one point in time, did all whites in 92 and in 91, and it didn't go well.
I think if the past 6 years has shown me anything, and it's shown me a lot of things over the past 6 years, it's that what jersey Nebraska's wearing does not matter if they won or they lost.
There's a lot of us that are superstitious, and some of the players are that way. Coach Jimmy Walden, our dear friend, wants Nebraska to wear road whites all the time.
I wouldn't hate it. I like the all-white look. I think it is that perfect mix of traditional Nebraska with kind of a modern twist. Is, you know what? We didn't wear the white pants back in the day, but we're going to start wearing them now. It's still that same traditional Nebraska uniform that you love. It's just the color of the pants are different, and maybe the older listeners within our audience that are not 23, almost 24 like myself are going to disagree with me.
Bill Dolman says no, and if Bill Dolman says no, then it's...
That's mainly how I was referring to when I talked about our older listenership. It's Bill Dolman.
He's going to sneak his way into the old studio and plow you.
Whoa.
fight. Fight. Right? It's got many different definitions. And that's not where
Phrasing, Schmitty.
That's not where I was going. You sick. Coors hat wearing. Wow. Basketball.
Yeah, that's where we go from that.
How about them? Listen, they played their butt off. I thoroughly enjoyed their comeback. They were down 10. That could have got real ugly the way Penn State was shooting. Nebraska tied it a couple of times, but it wasn't to be. Again, you feel sick for Bandamel. You feel sick for Gary Bandamel with the knee issue, out for the year. So Nebraska's really up against it. They are very limited with personnel. They're very limited defensively without Gary and Bandamel.
Well, the defense is what kept you in most of the games this year, and now you lose both the guys that got black shirts, and maybe you can talk about a black shirt curse, if you will. But those are your two guys that you were your defensive stalwarts, the guys that earned black shirts for the Husker basketball team this year, and you've lost them both.
Yeah, Wednesday, Northwestern will have Andy Markowski with us Wednesday to chat. Tomorrow on the show, Eric Warfield will tap into a standout Chief and Husker, get his take on things in KC. Mitch Sherman with us. Big thanks to Charlie McBride and Jay Moore. Talk to you at 4 tomorrow on Hail Varsity.